Unexpected turn of events. Donald Trump may be about to sideline Elon Musk from the DOGE. Yeah, you heard that right.
Trump tells Inner Circle that Musk will leave soon.
According to sources close to Trump and cited by several major media outlets, Musk could step down in the coming weeks from his current role as the all-powerful head of the Department of Government Efficiency. And I know what you're probably all wondering. Why? Musk and Trump are close friends, so why this? And why now? Well, in recent days, a series of developments may have accelerated the potential end of Musk's political journey inside the White House. It's known that several of Trump's external allies have grown frustrated with Musk's unpredictability, constant changes of opinion, and sudden shifts in direction. Some are even said to be starting to see Musk as a liability, politically speaking. And make no mistake, there are reasons behind that perception. Want a recent example? Well, here's one. On Tuesday, April 1st, elections were held to fill a vacant seat on the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. Musk had thrown his support behind one of the candidates, Brad Schimmel. He and his inner circle reportedly spent $25 million backing the former Wisconsin Attorney General's bid for the position. However, here's how things turned out.
Liberal wins Wisconsin court race, despite Musk's millions.
Susan Crawford, the Democrats' favorite candidate, ended up winning the seat, despite the huge amount of money Musk poured into the race, and despite his vocal endorsement. And for many inside Republican circles, this was a clear warning sign. Maybe Elon Musk isn't the political asset some believed he was. Maybe he's quite the opposite. In fact, the news we opened this video with, that Trump might soon invite Elon to step away from DOGE, could very well be directly linked to this political misstep. And make no mistake, this is no small matter. The DOGE has had, and continues to have, immense power in the Trump administration, and with it, so has Elon Musk himself.
Elon Musk says DOGE aims to finish $1 trillion in cuts by end of May. Musk said he wants to cut 15% of the government's annual spending, which amounted to $6.75 trillion in fiscal year 2024. That's a reduction of about $1 trillion.
So far, Musk's revisions have led to nearly 50,000 layoffs, while nearly 75,000 more employees have agreed to retire or voluntarily resign from their jobs. Estimates by the New York Times suggest that as many as 175,000 more withdrawals could be added in the coming weeks. We're talking about a huge cut that could slash nearly 12% of all US federal government workers. No joke.
Brand new Department of Government Efficiency. DOGE. Perhaps you've heard of it. Perhaps, which is headed by Elon Musk, who is in the gallery tonight.
Take note, however, because this Department of Government Efficiency has been acting in a kind of legal limbo. For example, Elon Musk himself works under the status of special government employee, which has allowed him to avoid the necessary congressional verification and oversight. What is not at all clear is whether this is compatible with the role, influence, and access that the billionaire has been granted. Be that as it may, Republicans pulled out all the stops a few weeks ago, passing a spending bill that gives free rein to the Trumpist chainsaw.
In DOGE, we trust. House GOP governs by embracing Trump's effort to cut government. Trump is pushing the GOP-led Congress to next pass what he calls a big, beautiful bill and $2 trillion in spending reductions.
And this is exactly where several questions arise. What are the cuts actually being made by DOGE? How transparent is Musk's work in the federal government? Which areas are being hit hardest by the spending cuts? What risks do these measures carry? Are these cuts proving popular within the US? Well, we're going to be looking at all this and more. Fire up the engines, and let's get started. From Millei's chainsaw to Musk's scissors, fiscal austerity seems to have become the official flag of the latest rock stars of international politics.
President Milei has a gift for me.
Javier Milei from Argentina, you guys know who that is, right?
Thank you. This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
Even so, when we talk about cuts in the state, we can essentially differentiate between two areas: employment and current spending. We'll leave investment to one side for now. Well, in the area of public employment, Elon Musk designed a voluntary retirement program with certain incentives to encourage many government employees to voluntarily leave their jobs. And so, in just 2 months, nearly 75,000 people have decided to accept Musk's incentive package, up to 10 months' salary for free, and say goodbye. Well, in a normal year, on average, about 150,000 employees leave their jobs in the federal government. So this means that in just 2 months, months, DOGE has already managed to remove almost half of the average number of workers who leave annually. Quantitatively, not bad. Although the biggest change is probably the intention to freeze new hires. And keep in mind,
To the 150,000 federal workers who voluntarily leave the government each year, we have to add the 50,000 to 60,000 who are fired for disciplinary reasons or subpar performance, and then another 3,000 workers who pass away due to a range of circumstances. And so, to fill all these vacancies, the federal government has been hiring more than 200,000 people per year, which is equivalent to 10% of its workforce. In other words, just by freezing new hiring in state jobs, the federal administration could cut 40% of its entire workforce in 4 years. And we also have to keep in mind that DOGE is exceeding the numbers of the last few years, so the effect could potentially be greater.
obviously we're talking about a theoretical exercise, because logically it remains to be seen whether the federal government could really remain operational with so few people available, which, truth be told, doesn't seem so straightforward. We'd be talking about, not counting the armed forces, a little more than 1.3 million public employees for a country of more than 340 million inhabitants. That would be a rather small ratio. But let's imagine that it is the case. Well, federal workers have an average annual salary of $106,000 US. This means that if no further hiring were to occur, the monetary savings could mount to $21.2 billion per year. And let's see, this may seem like a lot of money to us, because it is. To put it in perspective, $21 billion is twice the cost of the latest Olympic Games in Paris. We're talking about a lot of money, but the problem is that compared to the level of federal government spending, it is practically breadcrumbs.
Annual U.S. spending hovers around $1.2 trillion, while its total public debt now stands at $36 trillion. And so the savings in public employment of this administration would at best barely amount to 1.75% of spending, and 0.058% of Uncle Sam's public debt.
Of course, this doesn't mean that reducing the state's organizational structure by eliminating unnecessary positions when they really are unnecessary is wrong, but realistically, we aren't talking about a fiscal breakthrough. And it's also absolutely certain that the government will continue to make new hires, so the final impact would be much smaller.
The federal government, excluding the Postal Service and the armed forces, totals about 2 million public employees. Almost half of them work in activities such as Veterans Affairs, which in the United States is almost untouchable, or in the Department of Homeland Security, which is in charge of immigration policy, Trump's great obsession. So these two areas have been exempted, like the military, from the freeze on new hiring, so the adjustment is really falling onto other areas like health, energy, and education that are much smaller.
In other words, it's possible that the bulk of the adjustment has already been made or is close to being achieved. And that's not all. On top of that, the actual usefulness of the massive layoffs being pushed by Musk is also in question. Democratic circles believe that in reality, the work of the Department of Government Efficiency will bring more deficits. According to them, as the criteria being followed to dispense with many public employees are unclear, many now believe that the state may be shedding crucial professionals. This could have the opposite of the desired effect. For instance, more bureaucracy due to the agency's work progressing more slowly, worse services, and less revenue collection. Of course, on the flip side, conservative circles believe that DOGE's work will serve to discipline public agencies.
Just when you add caring and competence where it was absent before, you can actually save billions of dollars.
VisualPolitik community, so far some of the cuts have been justified by a lack of efficiency, or because they are in areas that the government will no longer serve, such as the Secretary of Education, which Trump has already announced he intends to dismantle. The debate is open, and it's too early to see how it will turn out. What we are sure of is that cutting staff is not enough. The savings from the layoffs cover just 2% of the $1 trillion cut pledge promised by Musk by the end of 2025. So the question is, where could the rest of the money come from? As we said at the beginning, employment is one thing, and another is current spending. So the scissors must extend to many more areas. And do you know what? Here the consensus among Republicans may not be so clear. What am I referring to? Well, listen up.
Rock, paper, or scissors?
Although politicians now seem to agree with fiscal austerity and spending cuts, the truth is that many welcome these measures as long as they don't touch their turf. Cuts Of course, we have to take care of the taxpayers' money. Of course, let them cut back on the others, because what I do and what is spent in my territory is very important. And yes, this is already happening. More than one Republican is starting to lose patience with all these cuts.
Elon Musk has suspended various state programs that had dozens of private contractors. All of this is causing a lot of SMEs and professionals to lose a lot of money across the country, which, not surprisingly, translates into thousands of calls to the offices of the respective congressmen and senators. In fact, for Republicans, these calls are becoming quite a headache. And don't forget that in the US, congressmen in the House of Representatives, who are mostly responsible for the budget, face elections every 2 years and are chosen in very open elections in their respective territories.
In mid-March, the Republican majority in Congress gave Trump's spending bill the go-ahead, but that came with a surprise. Ironically, Congress extended allocations that Biden had made for various agencies, such as the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which DOGE has closed. What's more, the spending bill passed by the Republicans themselves also allocates new funding for the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, that has been dismantled by Trump. So the question is, have Republicans lost their minds? Well, they haven't. Congress has approved these budget items, knowing that they will then be able to negotiate with the White House on their implementation. So one way or another, much of the spending of all these supposedly closed agencies will be maintained. The only cuts approved in the legislature have been on Medicaid and some agricultural programs, but not on the rest of the areas touched by Musk. In this way, Republicans have passed a large budget without estimating the cuts in order to negotiate its implementation with the executive, and thus be able to wage an internal lobbying war. But do you want a concrete example? Then check this out. We can take a look at the case of Tom Cole. In the photo, Republican representative for Oklahoma's 4th District, who also chairs none other than the Budget Committee of the lower house. Well, Musk ordered the closure of a Social Security office in his district, an Indian Health Services office, as well as a storm prediction center. Soon after, Cole's office began to fill up with letters and calls from angry constituents, so the congressman reached out to his contacts in the Oval Office. The result, you can see for yourselves.
Mr. Musk said, "We will make mistakes. Try to point them out to us and we'll try and fix them as we go." I found that to be the case. That's unfair, and that needs to be corrected. And you don't tell somebody or put on their record that they've done something wrong when they didn't do anything wrong. They just get caught in a riff. And I do worry about that.
On 7th March, Republican Cole announced that after common sense prevailed, the cuts in his district had now been suspended. According to him, the services that will remain in place are essential to the functioning of the state, and his work before DOGE has been an exemplary defense of his constituents.
Let me stress, we're talking about the chairman of the House Budget Committee himself. VisualPolitik community. While Republicans have avoided criticizing the Department of Government Efficiency in public, behind closed doors, they're doing everything they can to reverse its progress, at least in their own districts. If cuts happen, let it be in places that vote Democrat. Long live cutbacks, but not in my territory. But that's not all. There's another kind of Achilles heel. There is no certainty that the ultimate purpose of all these cuts is savings, deficit control, and reduction of public debt. Why do we say this? Well, because Trump is already thinking about spending that money.
There's even under consideration a new concept where we give 20% of the DOGE savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt, because the numbers are incredible, Elon. So many billions of dollars, billions, hundreds of billions, and we're thinking about giving 20% back to the American citizens.
The federal government is planning to use some of the money saved in consumer subsidies to stimulate the economy, which obviously will further limit the scope of all these measures. We already told you here on VisualPolitik, without legislative changes and a strong will, it will be practically impossible to put the public accounts on track. DOGE or no DOGE. And if there's one thing Trump showed us in his first term, it's that he likes to spend. Do you want another example of a measure that would create a new budget gap and is now being championed by Trump? Well, here you go.
Trump proposes auto loan interest tax deductions for US-made vehicles.
But this is not the end of all doubts. And be careful, because not all of them have to do strictly with expenses. Elon Musk slashed across the board, from public office IT licenses to top-level scientific personnel. But this also fueled an increasingly widespread doubt. Is on Elon Musk getting too much power? Now the concerns seem clearer than ever. Let's take a look.
The Red Baron?
Elon Musk is still part of the Trump administration as a special government employee. This title exists for particular advisors to the president in very concrete and specific areas. In this case, Musk has been chosen to advise the president on government efficiency. The problem is that the task on its own is very unspecific. Musk's powers have been so vague and unchecked that he has been virtually free to influence and meddle in any area of government.
In a way, Elon Musk is functioning as a kind of super minister with inquisitorial powers throughout the federal government. This has led to multiple legal challenges that have limited its actions. Elon Musk has been doing and undoing as he pleases, without even having the green light from Congress, or being subject to many regulations and compatibility restrictions.
Pay attention to the latter. Don't forget that apart from being a special government employee, this guy is also the richest man in the entire world, and that his fortune hasn't exactly grown on trees. In fact, Elon Musk runs several companies, including SpaceX, which survive mostly off the government. Even one of Tesla's biggest businesses so far has been precisely the sale of emissions credits, something that basically exists because of government regulation. VisualPolitik community, here's the truth. Much of Elon Musk's success has been closely tied to perks received from the government. And now he's dipping his toe into the government while still controlling all those companies. Something that is obviously setting off a lot of alarm bells. US federal law prohibits employees of the executive from engaging in commercial matters with personal interests. This is clearly the case with SpaceX's space exploration, defense, and telecommunications contracts. But let's calm down, because the tycoon has already promised to write off his accounts with the state.
The president was already asked and answered this question this week, and he said if Elon Musk comes across a conflict of interest with the contracts and the funding that DOGE is overseeing, then Elon will excuse himself from those contracts.
In February, Musk promised to terminate contracts between his companies and the federal government if and when they had to be reviewed by his department. And who decides which contracts the Department of Government Efficiency reviews? Well, Elon Musk himself. So you can imagine the result. Miraculously, DOGE has not found any anomaly in the contracts between the state and his company, or anything that would lead them to audit them. So the contracts don't have to be terminated. And VisualPolitik community, this is completely anomalous. Don't you find it dangerous and questionable that the auditor, the politician, the contractor, and the entrepreneur are all the same person? Doesn't this give Elon Musk a position of advantage over other rival companies? Some time ago in Argentina, there was a lot of talk about businessmen who benefited from doing business with the government. Well, what can I say? This doesn't seem to be so different. Nevertheless, Musk's business goes far beyond his contracts with the state. Donald Trump has brought Musk to cabinet meetings several times. And what can I say about the sales plug that the president decided to record in the White House grounds to boost the sale of Tesla cars? Because of all this, the polls are becoming quite clear. The power that Elon Musk has gathered has become increasingly unsettling to the public.
More than half of Americans believe Elon Musk has gained too much power in the federal government. And while Republican voters continue to broadly support him, the overall picture is very different.
Elon Musk has received a lot of power all at once, so much so that some are already talking openly that what he has really done is to rent the presidency, and this is what has surely begun to worry Trump's inner circles. His offices are located next to the White House, and everything indicates that the tycoon often sleeps just a dozen meters from the Oval Office, at the heart of America's executive power. And not only that, Elon Musk has repeatedly accompanied Trump to many places. He travels with the president in Marine One, in the presidential limousine, and on Air Force One. He meets with foreign leaders in government facilities, and even regularly accompanies the president on weekends to Mar-a-Lago, a complete experience. And let's see, historically, several businessmen have held special positions for certain presidents, but they've generally resigned from their business positions to do so. In stark contrast, Musk has not only kept them, but has given powers to audit all government spending. It is he who is in charge of overseeing state contracts with his own companies, and also with his competition. Be that as it may, these are the doubts raised by everything related to the DOGE. And what we've told you is what makes it so unclear today that the cuts, many of them necessary, will really serve to stabilize the public accounts. Therefore, there are strong rumors that the Republicans, even though they have the so-called trifecta, that is, control of the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate, could be considering a tax increase on both companies and the wealthiest. Just a few days ago, some conservative media, such as the legendary National Review, raised raised the alarm after hearing the words of the Republican senator for Ohio, John Husted. The rumors were true.
Senator, one of the other big issues that's been put on the table is the potential that actually taxes on the wealthiest will go up. Is that something that you would ultimately support?
Look, we have to try to restore fiscal sanity, so there's going to have to be a balance between revenue enhancements and tax cuts. And I think that everything like that should be on the table because the base of the Republican Party are working class Americans.
One way or another, Elon Musk's future at the DOGE now seems up in the air. The Tesla CEO could go from being something like Trump's super minister to becoming an external advisor once again, focused on his own business ventures. We'll see what happens, but for now, it's your turn. Has Elon Musk played too hard within the federal government? Don't you think there are clear conflicts of interest in the way he has been exercising his role? Leave us your opinions below in the comments, and let's start a debate. And very important, if you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to VisualPolitik if you haven't done so already. All the best. See you soon.